holy grail in sport is flow states, when you're not thinking at all. And when you're not thinking at all, when your mind is present, you basically can go into a state of flow where, even you'd start doing things that you don't think you can do. You make almost the impossible possible. Your mind can be in three different places. It can be either past, future, or present. When it's in the past, you can't get into flow. When it's in the future, you can't get into flow. It has to be in the now.
Welcome back to the Pathways podcast. And this week we're talking with Dr. John Pates, who's a senior sports psychologist at Aspire Academy in Qatar. Now, before moving to Qatar, John was on the European Golf Tour for around 10 years, working with some of the best golfers in the world and working with the Ryder Cup team. So John shares with us his experience of working at the top level of sport and the traits that he saw in the top athletes and how we might develop those with our students. So John's helped to develop the performance mindset pathway for Performance Pathways, and he shares with us some of those tricks and tips that he's going to be sharing throughout that pathway. So lots of stories from elite sport, lots of valuable experience from John, and I really hope you enjoy this conversation. Okay, so John, welcome to the Pathways podcast. And as always, your first question comes from our previous guest, who was Lorna Goldie from Swim England. And I was discussing with Lorna about how we create a positive and engaging environment within developmental sport. So her question to you was, can you remember learning to swim? And how do we make such learning journeys an exciting and engaging experience?
Okay, I think to make it exciting, you've got to, bring in the element of play. So when you're actually try to make it playful and fun, kids love like playing in water. And so having kind of games that are very enjoyable is going to make any sport enjoyable. So try to make everything into a game rather than a drill. I think that's the secret for any sports, to get into the psychology of it. It's all about having fun. We're probably going to talk about that later on as the autotetic experience, but it's all about having fun. And if you can have fun, you're going to overcome a lot of psychological problems in the future about when you start competing.
I mean, I think you're best known for being on the golf tour, working with top players on the European Tour, the Ryder Cup team. But actually, you've got your original experience comes from physical education, comes from university sport. I mean, golf is not known for being the most fun sport in the world. And I mean, professionals take it really seriously. But I'm interested, how did you get into that from that education background, that school sport? What was that move into high performance psychology?
Well, first of all, I started off as a PE teacher. I did that for many years, and then I moved into further education where I taught PE and psychology, and then I won a Fulbright scholarship to America and started working in an American college in Texas. Laredo, Texas, and I taught psychology there. And that's when I started to want to move into higher education in psychology. And when I got my first real post as a lecturer, senior lecturer at Hallam University in Sheffield, I used to play quite a lot of golf as well. And I met a guy called Mark Rowe, who was won the European Tour, but he was injured, and Mark, we became good friends. And when Mark actually recovered from his injury, he took me out on tour, and I met a guy called Peter Cowan, and he was working with many of the top golfers in the world. He was a coach, one of the top coaches in the world, and then he introduced me to Darren Clark, and the first week I worked with him, he went and won a major tournament. And the following week, he asked me if I wanted to work with him for that year. So I gave up my position as a psychologist lecturer and went on tour with Darren Clark. And you know, a week after I've won, I was in New York talking to Tiger Woods, and that's how I started. So I really was a lecturer 1 week, won a major tournament with Darren Clark on the Sunday, and on the Tuesday I was on an aeroplane, and on a Wednesday, Thursday I was meeting people like Tiger Woods, and I had like 100,000 people around me. It was quite a challenge.
Yeah, I'd imagine. I mean, you've gone straight from university life to the one of the highest performing.
Yeah, athletes. I didn't do any junior stuff or anything like that. I just basically went from there to there in actually a magic 7 days. Just a life transformational 7 days. Yeah.
While you're on the tour, obviously you've had access to the likes of Tiger Woods, one of the greatest sports people ever. But I'm sure along the journey, you've also worked with some players that have made it, some players that haven't made it. What did you see as the difference between the winners and the losers, the real top guys, the made it and the almost made it guys?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest noticeable thing is that they set ridiculously high goals. Tiger Woods was always talking about being number one and winning majors. All the guys I've worked with that have won majors have done the similar thing. The Ryder Cup team were also in that mindset. So they would set very, very high goals. In the Pathways program, I talk about impossible goals. And they seem to be impossible. It's like winning gold at the Olympic Games. But if you do not set that, you don't achieve great performance. I mean, going back to swimmers, Michael Phelps walked up to his coach at the age of 12 and said, I want to be the best swimmer ever. And that's when the program for greatness started. And that's when Bob Bowman talks about it in many of his lectures. He knew he was going to have to change his programs and get this guy to be the greatest swimmer ever in many disciplines. I mean, no one can... it's almost impossible to be brilliant in every stroke, but he seemed to be so. And you talk to coaches, and apparently his techniques are not that good, but it was his work ethic and his drive to be the best ever becomes a major factor at the top level. And so working with the top golfers, you know, working with people like Rory McIlroy and Tiger Woods, who became world leaders, and the guys I worked with who won majors like Matt Fitzpatrick, and they all have that mindset to begin with, and that drive gets them out of bed every morning to train, and then they create a routine to achieve that. Because if you're only thinking about being a mediocre athlete, you only train to be mediocre.
We're talking about the top guys, but really what you're saying is all of those started with a huge dream, a huge vision, and they used that for motivation and then went about the process to achieving it. So my question is, being someone who's been in sport and knowing that there's only one Tiger Woods, there's only one Michael Phelps, there's 99,000 other people underneath that like me who were almost made it. How do we build that vision for our students without having to deal with the loss from not achieving that, knowing that most of them aren't going to achieve it?
Well, I think the biggest thing is you've got to choose a sport that you're really passionate about. You've got to choose a sport that you enjoy playing more than the result, and that is the secret mindset. It's like, you know, I wanted to be the white Michael Jordan, you know, And I did everything I could to get really good in basketball. But obviously, I wasn't the white Michael Jordan. I didn't even play in the NBA. But I loved every game because I loved the sport. So it's finding a sport you're really, really passionate about. Then the results doesn't seem to matter. But the point is, you're still striving to become one of the best in the world. And also having an optimistic mindset is really important here, because that will make you resilient to things like failures, because we're going to fail, we're going to get injured, and we need to be able to overcome that. And the only way you can overcome those things is having a sport that you're really passionate about, so you're always going to return, and a mindset where you're highly optimistic. Even now at 58, I really do feel I can walk into on a court and shoot baskets. And I can. I don't know why. I don't know how, but I still shoot a pretty good percentage, because it's always, I love the game. I don't care if I miss, so I'm not afraid. And, it's all about, just enjoying the game. And when you enjoy the game and enjoy what you're doing, the intrinsic motivation goes up. And that's really what you need to help you become a lifelong learner or lifelong passion in that sport. Because I'm sure yourself, okay, you didn't quite make Olympic gold, but you're still passionate about athletics, and that's why you've constructed, the Pathways program, because of your major passion, because that's really your purpose in life. You've got this passion for sport and developing athletes, and so every time you go to set a goal that gives you purpose and you value, that's gold dust.
These are really all of the things we talk about school sport and PE being about. It's about, can we help to build a passion for students in whatever sport they enjoy? But then about the next step is, how do we use that to build an optimistic outlook? How do we use that to build a lifelong engagement, a lifelong learning process? I'm thinking, because I know you've kind of combined now your education background and your high-level psychology background to be a youth psychologist at Aspire Academy, as well as working with a few other individual up-and-coming players in different sports around the world. I'm interested, from those golfing icons, what are the traits that you're using, or what are the traits you're trying to develop that you've seen with them, with the youth players?
Okay, well, I think they're great role models. There's the first thing, and I think getting youth players to understand there's a process behind greatness, and greatness is based on, or greatness can be achieved if you have great daily rituals. So I focus a lot on daily rituals, and there are many things that you can do in sport that will transfer to other areas of your life. Your relationships, for instance, your girlfriend and boyfriend, you can even go into that. It's quite at a tangent, but it's about relationships. It's about respecting people. So if you don't respect your boyfriend and girlfriend, you won't have a great relationship, if you know what I mean. So things like that, these are great kind of learning skills that you need in every aspect of your life as well. Because what's quite interesting, the top players have a very harmonious life. It's not chaotic. Very rarely is it chaotic. It's quite humdrum, but also it's usually quite family orientated. There's a lot of peace and love in there, and that's what they need to keep them going. They usually have a strong family unit behind them, usually. And it's interesting, when that gets disrupted, their game gets disrupted. As soon as Tiger Woods went through his divorce, he stopped winning majors and started getting injuries. As we know, stress creates injuries, psychological stress. From an educational point of view, then, it's all about getting a quality daily rituals and what those are. So I always get people to start focusing on the great things in their life. We call it gratitude. training, you know, but what is really going on well in your life. And rather than focusing on all the things that are not going well. And that, you know, trying to learn how to be positive in every situation and every environment. You know, instead of looking at somebody and looking at all the bad things about them, what about looking at all the great things about them? And that will create an atmosphere that is non-toxic. The other way is toxic. Yeah. So basically, it's looking at the world as an opportunity, something, a place to grow in, and a place of beauty, and that everybody in it is important and relevant, and it's interesting when you start focusing on those things, how different your day is. Once you stop judgment in a negative sense, your days start changing. Eliminate judgments, because it creates negative emotions. So it's all about creating positive emotions. And what the great athletes do seem to be able to create positive emotions. You saw somebody like, you know, when Usain Bolt walks into a stadium, he doesn't get nervous because, and we're working with around Tiger Woods, he doesn't get nervous before tournaments. They have jokes with people. They're not serious. They're what they call in the autotelic fun state. They play the game like a child would. They're not thinking about the consequences. So they always stay in positive emotions. And that's what I'm trying to say. You know, you have to stay in this play mode. I always say, try to play as a child, in the sense that you're curious, you don't know the rules, but you're just having fun. You know what I mean? And that seems to work really, really well at top levels and getting people into competitions. But you have to train your mind to do that. It's a mindset, and you have to kind of be harsh with yourself and say, look, I need to go in and set a goal of having fun today.
Well, I find it interesting because what you're talking about is creating an environment for positivity, an environment where sport can be fun. But I mean, I know one on the performance mindset pathway you put together for the platform, one of the key tenets is this autotelic experience, which means just playing and having fun. And I remember when I was an athlete, I did sport as a kid because I loved sport. I wanted to play sport. Then you become an athlete and it becomes very serious, and it's very structured, regimented routines. Everything is about finding that 1% improvement. And the training environment is quite strict and stressful environment. And then you get to the competition day and the coach pats you on the back and says, okay, just go out and have fun. And you think
but you haven't been training for fun. Yeah, exactly.
So how do we keep that fun at that transition from we're just engaging in PE? Maybe we've got some students that want to go on and take it a little bit more seriously. They're in the after school club, something like that. How do we keep the fun whilst also having this structured practice that we need to do?
I think as a coach, you need to have fun games in there. Make everything a game orientated approach. You know, so even in athletics, I remember watching one of your first sessions in athletics. You had the kids, you know, running around a circle. And it was almost like pass the parcel, but it was actually teaching them how to run on curves. You were doing things that were getting them to do things unconsciously, but in a game. You had a games-based approach. Now, you can bring a games-based approach into almost any situation. So, you know, in golf, even if it's a really serious situation, you know, a serious sport, but actually, a lot of the players will be playing against each other. Let's see who gets the first putt in or the first chip in. You know, let's see who gets closer. You know, when I first started working Darren Clark, he almost did that to win a world championships. He beat Tiger Woods in the world's match play. But Tiger Woods was like hitting it like 30, 40 yards in front of him. So it was quite intimidating. But he made it into a game. He thought, well, okay, you're hitting it 40 yards in front of me. Instead of thinking, oh my God, this guy's so much better than me, he's going, well, I'm going to be hitting my first shot and I'm going to get it closer to the pin. So he started playing, I'm going to get it closer to the pin game during a major world championship tournament. So Tiger was trying to probably intimidate him, whereas he made it into a game. And who do you think won?
So is this a way of getting into flow, do you think?
Exactly. Yeah, the holy grail in sport is flow states, when you're not thinking at all. And when you're not thinking at all, when your mind is present, you basically can go into a state of flow where, even you'd start doing things that you don't think you can do. You make almost the impossible possible. Your mind can be in 3 different places. It can be either past, future, or present. When it's in the past, you can't get into flow. When it's in the future, you can't get into flow. It has to be in the now. Okay, I call it being in the now. But so when you pure concentration on what you're trying to do, and there's no influence like, oh, I don't want to mess up here, that's a future projection. Yeah, well, you're not thinking of the consequences. When you get an athlete who doesn't think of the consequences or doesn't give a darn, as the great Jack Nicklaus said, that's when they're dangerous. That's when you're more creative. That's when your body relaxes. That's when you are in the best state of arousal. You need a little bit of this, but you need a little bit of that as well. It's like a harmony between the two. The top athletes often called lukewarm. I'm not in my parasympathetic nervous system mode. I'm not really straight into the sympathetic, because that will be too much relaxed. But it's kind of a combination of the two. And the way to combine the two is to stay in the now and be present and have exercises that keep you present. And that's why you need a routine.
So here's an interesting question, because we're talking about the Usain Bolts, the Tiger Woods, the Michael Phelps that have a positive outlook. They have high confidence, but they're also the best people that have ever lived in their sport. Do you think they're the best in their sports because they had this outlook, or did they learn to do that made them great? Because I'm thinking about some of our students are highly confident, highly positive. Others are very anxious, very, very timid on the field. Can we teach those to be confident and positive athletes?
Yeah, absolutely. Because everything is mind. It's how you look at the world. You can always change if you want to. The interesting thing about Tiger Woods, everyone thought he was fantastic. But he didn't have one number one stat. He wasn't the best putter, wasn't the best driver, wasn't the best approach player, wasn't the best at anything apart from one thing: bounce backs. When Tiger Woods made a mistake, he'll come back with, like a bogey, he'll come back with a birdie. So it's about also being smart about what you could become great at. Steph Curry did the same. He knew he wasn't going to compete with LeBron James and that type of game. So he became the best 3-point shooter in the world, because that's what his target was. Then he became one of the best playmakers in the world, because that was what he set another target after he became the best 3-point shooter in the world. So you can still be the best at something, especially in team sports. You can be the best at something, like a best defender, a best right back, a best midfield player, whatever. You don't have to be Leon Messi or whatever, You can still be great in your position.
I feel like you're basically summing up what decathlon was for me, which was I wasn't very fast, I couldn't jump very far, I couldn't throw very far, and yet was an international decathlete, because actually the whole game of it, talking about the making it fun, the whole game of it for me was being this really skinny teenager trying to beat the discus throwers in the discus.
Trying to beat the top players. Yeah,
and
exactly.
That was the game for me, until you suddenly realize, well, actually, I'm winning the discus.
But you had fun doing it. It was more of a game. See, that's the autotelic experience. I remember Jessica Ennis in a book saying, really, when she came into her discipline, I'm too small. She's minute compared to the other heptathletes. Absolutely minute. Okay, she was quick, so she could win the 100 meters and maybe the hurdles, whatever. But she's too small for high jump. Not powerful enough for shot put, or javelin and things like that. So, but she really worked on just getting average there and maximizing her strength. And she came through as an amazing world champion. And but her psychological barriers were stopping her do that, because she felt, I'm not. How am I ever going to get there? Because I don't have the physical abilities. But there are. If you focus on your strengths in most sports, you can actually find a way of becoming a superpower in it. And that's what she did. I'm going to win the sprints. I'm going to be average in this, but I'm going to get myself as maximized out of my field things. I hate the 800, but I'm going to become a great 800 meter runner. You know what I mean? And, I've already got two things that I know I can be the best in the world of, because she could have easily been a hurdler, couldn't she? She had times where she could have been one of the best hurdlers in the world.
Everyone in combined events goes through that at some point. I was the same. My best event was a high jump. I had to make a decision: do I go the decathlon route or the high jump route? And I went
jump, yeah,
because it's more fun. But actually, exactly what you're saying is within decathlon was about being average at everything, being on par with everyone at everything, and then if you have a good event that gets you a few extra points, that might be the difference between winning and losing.
Yeah.
But what you can't afford to do is have any events that are below standard. And I feel like that's where our students, actually, they don't need to be the best footballer in every position, shooting, passing, tackling. Actually, they need to be good enough at everything. And then if they have David Beckham was brilliant.
That's right. Yeah, I'm a great free kick specialist. I'm Maguire, I'm great in the air. You just have to find a way, what's your strength, and make it really into a superpower, and then be average in everything else, especially in team sports. You don't have to be the greatest passer or whatever, but you could be like, a great shooter, or a great penalty taker, or a great tackler. You know what I mean? It's, you work out what you could be good at and you really work on it.
Is this where the hero's journey comes in? I know another one of the pathways is about the hero's journey. And is that about everybody's the center of their own story? Is that what it's about, the hero's journey, finding their unique skills, their unique abilities, and leveraging on that?
Absolutely. I was in a team, I was very unathletic, but my hero's journey was I'm going to be the best shooter on this team. So my nickname was actually called Money, because they knew if they gave it me and I was free, I'd score. I've got the money shot in the clutch. I could do that because I practiced it. That's really all I practiced, in many ways. So I became really, really good at it. So it's, the hero is really an instinct that you've got inside you. And how can you contribute and be a hero to a team? And once you start thinking on that lines, it's a concept created from a guy called Carl Jung. It's in the psychology domain called Jungian psychology. But Carl Jung said we're born with these instincts, like we're born with a heart. It's like biology. He was trying to fuse psychology and biology together. We've got these instincts. And one of them is the hero. And the reason why he came to that conclusion was because there are heroes in every culture. Every culture, it doesn't matter, even if you go to the Amazon jungle and go to the most basic tribe there, they will have a hero story. So the hero is paramount in our culture. We are looking for heroes in our leaders, and if you tap into the hero, your hero's instinct, you will also achieve much higher levels, because what does a hero do? A hero's resilient, a hero's hardworking, A hero saves people. A hero is benevolent. So a hero has all the qualities of a top performer and a top person, a top human being. You know, so I had a young Derby County football player phone me up about this time last year, and he'd just been moved into Derby County team. The coach came up to him and says, "I probably won't play you this year. You're my third choice." Okay. And so he was a bit despondent. He was coming off an injury, so he hardly played the season before. He didn't understand why Derby had bought him. And he was giving me all these stories of the victim stories. And victim stories, oh, I can't do this. I'm not going to be good enough. And he said, the coach doesn't like me. The athletes don't like me. So that automatically brings out negative emotions. And some of your athletes might think like that, the coach doesn't want to pick me, I'm no good in this sport, I'm black, you know what I mean? That's a victim story. So I said to him this thing: if you were the hero of this team, what would you do? If you were the heroes of this team, how would you practice? How would you talk to your coaches? How would you talk to your athletes? How would you train? And when you got the opportunity, what would you do? And we worked on that. Create a different movie, a movie of how he was going to, and we mentally rehearsed how he was going to practice. We mentally rehearsed how he was going to talk to the coach. We mentally rehearsed how he was going to talk to the athletes around him. That player played 59 games last year. Okay. He was player of the season for Derby County. Derby County went up in the championship, and he scored the most significant goals to make them go up, and he's a right back. He shouldn't be scoring goals, but he's the hero of the team. So when the team needed a goal, he came up and scored.
I mean, that's essentially what we're trying to build. You spoke about so many traits in there that are exactly the positive benefits that we're trying to get out of sport for all of our students, using sport to build these traits. So just to kind of try and sum it up, because we've spoken about so many things: autotelic experience, passion, optimism, building routines, building growth mindset. If we want to build, a school, a class full of heroes, where's the one place that we start? What's the one thing we could do to start building that environment?
It's all about my interpretation and what I'm going to get from my world. And it's all about how I feel and working on myself, which is called personal development, which many people don't do. It's about constantly trying to develop yourself. So you look at the world differently. You're trying to, be the best version of yourself. And if you're the best version of yourself, you actually speak to people great. You speak to yourself great. This is where the positive self-talk comes in. Think about the conversations you have with yourself and work out what conversations do you harm and what conversations give you positive emotions.
I mean, I think this is essentially what you put together for us in your performance mindset pathway. It's
absolutely, that's what the mindset's about. Yeah,
it's all about that personal development. And actually, even though we're setting these big aspirational, these impossible goals, that really is, it's not about being the best in the world, but it's about being the best version of you and using sport as a vehicle to develop that. And that starts with that big goal to help you set up the process. So some of the videos you put together that really break it down into all its parts are brilliant. Little two minute videos about each of these topics for students to engage in are great. So I can't wait to see those on the platform. The last thing is we've taken so much from you today, all these little nuggets.
Can I say one thing? Can I say one thing just to top that off, or just to conclude it? I always say, on your gravestone, what do you want written? Do you want written, this person was grumpy? Or do you want written, this person was an inspiration to everyone around them and everyone loved them, regardless of whether they were a good athlete or not? So everyone can be a good person to others. Everyone can be an inspiration to others. Everyone can be a hero to others. And if you take on that idea, you will be pretty happy for the rest of your life. It's not about money. It's not about materials. Not about whether you drive a Porsche. It's about how you can inspire yourself and inspire others on every day of your life, and that gives you the quality of life.
I mean, I think that for me, the last thing I want to be is average. You know, I decided to do athletics. I want to try and go to the Olympics. I decided to work for myself doing Brockman athletics. You know what? Let's go big. Let's get as many sports as possible.
Absolutely. I mean, you took a great risk. You were a very comfortable coach in an environment where you're highly valued, and we surely miss you. But the point is, I can be better than this. You wanted to be a better version of yourself and bring education globally rather than to one small population. And this is what the Pathways is all about, bringing it globally to the world. This is what it's about. This is the psychology of it. These are great skills and drills, and that you can develop your game and develop you as a human being. It's not just you developing your game and skills. It's developing you so you can be a superpower in any situation, in every element of your life, based on your relationships, your jobs, and sport as well, obviously. But most people will have other jobs and do other things, but you can be an inspirational to the world, and that's what the world needs at the moment, inspiring leaders. And you can be that through this program.
Well, I hope to be a role model for exactly what we're talking about, which is I've taken what I learned as an athlete and taking it into the program, and what your contribution to that program is really amazing from that psychology point of view. The last part, just to round off, because we could talk for hours, the two of us, but just to round off, was for us to give you something back, for you to pass a question on to the next guest. If there's something you're interested in learning about, if there's something you're thinking about at the moment, do you have a question that you'd like to leave our next guest?
Yeah, I'd like the next guest to focus on, because it's one of the themes I'm very interested in, is how do you achieve greatness in an athlete? How do you get them to greatness? And what is greatness for you?
Dr. John Pates, thanks a lot for coming on the Pathways podcast.
Thank you for inviting me.